It is another episode of the Juice on the Cuse podcast. Wes Cheng alongside Jim Stechschulte. Thanks so much for joining us on this Friday, April 4, 2025. So much to talk about today as always. We begin today with basketball. Jim, a big week in the portal. Syracuse adding two key pieces of the 25-26 team in Nait Kingz and Nate George from Oregon State and Georgia Tech. Jim, let's start with Nait Kingz. What do you think of this move?
Kingz was the first of the two to transfer to Syracuse, and he came with some gaudy stats, including an eye-popping 44.6% shooting mark from three-point range last season at Oregon State. Kingz is coming in to most likely be the starting small forward, even though he's only 6'5" and listed at 190 pounds. So he's similar size to J.J. Starling, a little taller but a little lighter. But again, he's primarily being brought in for the shooting. He's actually shot over 50% overall in the last two seasons that he's played, 51.5% at the College of Southern Idaho. And then after missing a year with that torn ACL, he shot over 50% last year from Oregon State, including that 44.6% mark from three-point range. He's got a little bit of playmaking ability, and he's an okay defender, nothing to write home about. But again, it's hard to see Kingz not coming in. It's possible he comes in maybe a bench role, but he has an instant offense kind of guy. But the way the roster is structured right now, it looks like he's going to start, although the possibility exists that he will come off the bench.
Yeah, Jim, I thought the Kingz transfer was a little curious just because I'm not sure, like you, how he fits into the starting lineup. You pointed out a bunch of stats. Let me point out one more. He played in 31 games for the Beavers. He started in all 31 of those games. So he's not transferring across the country just to come off the bench. So I think he really does have to start. That means he's probably going to start at wing with J.J. Starling at shooting guard, and we'll get to him in a little bit, but then Nate George coming in to start at point guard. And yeah, I think defensively, that like you said, that's going to be an issue. I've seen enough of the tape on Kingz to know that he's not playing matador defense per se, but he's not exactly a ball hawk. And we talked about the need for Syracuse to get a 3-and-D guy, but there's only that half of that component. But again, this is a guy who started last year. I would not think he wouldn't transfer unless he's going to start again. So, Jim, we move on to the big story from Friday with Nate George leaving Georgia Tech, coming to Syracuse. You have to like this move a lot.
Nathan George is the most recent addition to the roster, and frankly, he's just coming in to be the starting point guard after leading the ACC in assists last year and finishing 11th in the nation with 6.5 dimes per game. In addition to that playmaking ability, George does a pretty good job taking care of the ball as well. He's actually had assist-to-turnover ratios of over 2-1 in both his freshman and sophomore seasons. He's still developing as a shooter, increasing his percentages from 69% to 78.9% at the free throw line, which suggests that his three-point shooting is also not at its ceiling. He improved that perimeter mark from 31.4% as a freshman to 33.9% last year. Most noteworthy is that increase in three-point shooting percentage also came with an increase of attempts from 102 as a freshman to 177 last year. George also does have some ability in the mid-range. He has struggled in his 2 seasons of collegiate ball to finish at the rim. He's actually been a solid defender as well, improving his game from between his freshman to sophomore seasons, and did so while decreasing his fouls per 100 possessions. So in all, he should be a solid defender at the point for the Orange. George's commitment is actually the best of the three that Syracuse has got to this point in the offseason. Like I said, he'll drop straight into the starting lineup as the point guard, working as a distributor to make things easier for the scorers of J.J. Starling and Donnie Freeman and Nate Kingz. And he should be able to help set up easy scores for a couple of the big men like William Kyle and Sadiq White. He's probably going to provide better defensive impact as well than Kingz, and also more than what Jaquan Carlos did this past season, if no reason other than just his size. But all in all, George and Kingz, both good improvements to the Syracuse roster.
Yeah, Jim, I agree. This is exactly the kind of point guard that Syracuse has been lacking. As you mentioned, good size at 6'3", 185 pounds. He's a pass-first guy, so I expect him to be able to distribute the ball to all the offensive players Syracuse is bringing in or have kept from last year. And he's a guy that can get to the tin. He shoots 33% from downtown, so that's at least enough to keep you honest. And let's not forget where he's from, Toronto. Syracuse working that Canadian pipeline like they did with Tyler Ennis, Andy Rounds, O'Shea Brissett, among others. This is a big deal move. Not every day you can get a guy that led a Power 5 conference in assists to come in and play for your team. So good move for Syracuse here to create some of that offseason excitement. You can really see the difference with them getting to a lot more NIL in the offseason. And Jim, we move on to football. Let's talk about a couple commitments from Syracuse football this past week. More good news for the Orange rolling in.
A couple 2026 commits added to the Orange program. Both three-star defensive players who both had long lists of Power 4 interest. First being Cameron Wilson. He's a defensive end from Miami Southridge. He is, as we've seen from a couple other guys that the Orange have added recently to the program, an upside player. And he's got a lot of upside just on his on a couple numbers on his scouting profile. And there's three of them. The first one is 6'5". The second one is 215 pounds. And the third one is 20 sacks. That last number speaks to his athleticism, as the 20 sacks is how many he racked up last season. And the first numbers speak to the upside of offering him. That 6'5" height and 215 pound frame suggests that he's exceptionally athletic, and then also that he should be able to put on a lot more strength on the long body, a little more size, getting up to more of a, eventually getting up to more like a 230, 240, maybe even more as he fills out as a player. The second player is a different defensive player, not a defensive end, but a defensive back, specifically a safety, Zayden McDonald. Once again, Fran Brown tapping into his connections in the state of New Jersey. McDonald actually is currently ranked as the 11th best player in the state in the 2026 class. So he is different than Wilson. He doesn't have the outsized measurables that Wilson has, as well as some of the other more recent commits to the program. But that would suggest that he's a little bit more of a polished player in combination with that high ranking in the state. He's a little bit, and he's also more of a known commodity as well. And some of the highlights of that of his Power 4 offer and interest sheet include a couple programs you might have heard of, such as Ohio State, Penn State, and Tennessee.
So, Jim, I'll go in the same order that you did here. So I'll start with Cam Wilson, definitely a Rivals blue chip prospect, rated a high 3-star with the potential to go to 4 stars at the end of next season. And the offer sheet speaks to that. He's got 20 or so offers, including from the SEC. I just pulled out some of the offers here. Cal, Florida State, Iowa, Minnesota, Ole Miss, North Carolina. So the offer sheet already speaks to the type of player that Syracuse is bringing in. We had a chance to speak with Wilson after the commitment. He said it came down to his relationship with the coaching staff. That certainly starts with the general manager. Shout out to Coach Cap for covering the Florida area, able to get Wilson up on a visit. So just big time commitment there. And really same with McDonald. He tells the Juice Online he felt a family bond. He said that, quote, it was more than just football, end quote, as to why he committed. And yes, he's another candidate for a blue chip prospect, Jim. He's got the offer sheet to back it up. As you mentioned, in the talent-rich state of New Jersey, he's the 11th ranked recruit in that state. So if you're a Syracuse football fan, this was a great week for you, all-around good week for Syracuse sports. And we're going to take a quick break. Aiden Seng will talk a little spring practice when we return. This is the Juice on the Cuse podcast. Back on the Juice on the Cuse podcast, Wes Cheng here with you. We're thrilled to be joined by the Juice Online staff writer, Aiden Seng. Aiden, how are you today?
I'm doing good. It's a nice day outside for the first time in a while, so I'm excited.
Yeah, always gotta keep those things close to the chest when you're enjoying a nice day in Syracuse, especially in late March, early April. So, Aiden, I want to get you started on this one. You've been covering a lot of football practice. Wanted to see what you've seen on the field so far and who stood out to you.
Yeah, the biggest thing that stood out to me is how competitive the practices have been. And that's one of the things the coaches have talked about, especially on the defense, because if you look at the starting lineup from Miami, 5 of those guys have either graduated or left. So there should be at least 5 spots, especially at linebacker, as you have to replace Barron, Wax, and Diggs. So a player that stood out that Coach Robert White talked about, Derek McDonald potentially stepping up, and also number 18, David Omoparola. He also spoke to the press, and they've been playing fast on defense, especially in the drills, which I think is exciting for fans.
Yeah, so obviously interesting to see what's going on with the linebackers on the field, but you also had a chance to catch up with Coach Wright after on Friday. So what is he saying, and what is he seeing projecting for the future with so many guys to replace?
Yeah, I think he's optimistic because last season the issue was you had to teach a lot of these guys a new scheme as Fran Brown and the new regime came in, but that scheme should be better set in stone coming into his second year in charge of that group. So I don't think he's as stressed out about losing all those guys, considering a lot of the people that he's replacing them with are very familiar with what he wants to do defensively.
Yeah, so another one of the topics I know that you had a chance to speak with Coach Wright about was the scrimmage. Syracuse was set to scrimmage Colorado, or at least they had floated the idea about that. And on last week, the NCAA said no. So what was the player reaction? What was the coach reaction to that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for the players is that they just wanted to compete, and I get it. They're only going to be facing Syracuse players until August, and I think to get to be able to play other players in April and get the competitive juices flowing, I think would have been helpful. Some of the things that NCAA cited were the timing of it, considering they had only brought this up recently and they want to execute this in less than a month. They also cited potential recruiting advantages by having a game against an opponent in your home field, and they also cited academics, which, I mean, come on.
All right, so we get past that part, but Aiden, you've covered a lot of spring practices, especially last year, and then you've covered a couple this year. So let's compare the two. When you look at 2024 spring practice and then you look at 2025, what are some of the biggest differences you see, if any?
Yeah, I think the most impressive thing coming from last year to this year is you can see how well established Fran Brown's culture has been. You see the tons and tons of recruits and their families in the facility. You see Justin Barron was actually helping out with drills for the linebackers, which doesn't mean everything, but it definitely means something as to the culture that Fran Brown has created and the family within the program that has been brought upon in Syracuse. So I think that's definitely a good sign, having the recruits there, and he's been able to recruit well already. So I think the big difference is it's very clear the system, the way they're doing things, and who's in charge going into year two.
So you mentioned before you got to speak with David Omoperolia. It's hard for us to say too. So he talked about learning from the people that had come before him and applying that success. And he's one of those linebackers that I think is on the verge of really getting on the radar. So what did he have to say about learning from the upperclassmen?
Yeah, he talked about especially Diggs and Wax, two guys who have been playing college ball for a while. So not only learning about what they're doing on the field, but off the field when it comes to taking care of their bodies and watching film, which I think is something fans would like to hear. And also within his versatility, lining up off the ball and on the ball, something that Wax has done especially, and also Diggs. So learning between two different types of players, I think has helped his overall versatility. He's listed as linebacker 6'3", 244. So a little bit of a tweener, but being able to learn from two guys who are likely going to be competing for NFL roster spots, I think is going to be very helpful going into his second year playing.
Yeah, one other thing that he had spoken about, and he talked about going through the 4th and 1 and 4th and 9 scenarios and just being on display, within the Syracuse program this spring. Can you elaborate on that, about what he spoke about being in those 4th down situations?
Yeah, so anywhere you go throughout the Syracuse facility, you're going to see 4th and 1 and 4th and 9 everywhere, almost as much as you're going to see dart. And that refers to the play against Boston College and the plays against Stanford. And they feel like if one of those goes the other way, then they could be talking about playing in the ACC championship or playing in the college football playoff. So we talked about when you see 4th and 1 and 4th and 9 on display, it just motivates them extra to do the extra rep, to grind through practice, no matter how hard it is, knowing that those little details can pay off come October, come November during the games.
So Aiden, we'll get you out of here on this one. Coach Wright has had a chance to, I guess, coach brothers now, because you mentioned Fadil Diggs before. He's now headed to the NFL, and his younger brother, Fatim Diggs, has an opportunity to play at Syracuse and get more minutes now, or more plays on the field and more snaps, because he's next in line. So what did Robert Wright say about that?
Yeah, I think he's excited about Fatim Diggs, his future role. He's a redshirt freshman this year. His connection with the Diggs family dates back to when he was recruiting Fadil to Texas A&M. And so he is excited about now coaching Fatim, who is 6'2", 219, so a little smaller than his brother, but is a lot younger, so he still has the chance to develop and become, I mean, if he's anything like his older brother, then I think Syracuse fans are going to be pretty excited.
Yeah, I think they'll do pretty well with that. Aiden, we appreciate it. Thanks for coming on to talk a little Syracuse football with us again. The Juice Online staff writer, Aiden Cheng. Aiden, thanks for your time. We'll talk to you soon.
No problem. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Back on the Juice on the Cuse podcast, Wes Cheng alongside Jim Stechschulte. Jim, we're running out of show. You got a closing thought for us?
I do have a closing thought, Wes. And surprisingly, coming from me, it's about lacrosse. Specifically, Saturday's home contest with Notre Dame is a big one for the Orange. SU enters the game on a 5-game winning streak and ranked 7th in the country. And the Irish coming in at ranked number 5 in the polls. SU, it's a steep challenge for the Orange and the Irish. SU is 3-2 on the season against ranked opponents, but they are 3-1 at the JMA Wireless Dome against ranked foes. This also marks the first of 4 straight games against ranked opponents as the Orange wind down their schedule. It's a big game for the Orange, obviously, and not just because it's another ranked team, but the Orange has a big chance to keep things going in a positive direction with the postseason looming just 4 weeks away. And hopefully the Orange can make it 6 straight wins and improve their positioning for both the ACC and NCAA tournaments.
A lacrosse closing thought from Jim. Now I've seen it all. Jim, I wanted to close the show on Carmelo Anthony. The Syracuse legend was elected to the Basketball Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility earlier in the week. Anthony was the 3rd pick in the 2003 NBA draft. He would go on to be a 10-time NBA All-Star, a 6-time All-NBA selection, averaging 22.5 points, 6.2 rebounds throughout his 19-year NBA career. Of course, we remember him in Syracuse for leading the Orange to their first and only current NCAA championship in his freshman season. Just a great career for Anthony. Unfortunately, never won that NBA championship, but hard to argue this wasn't a Hall of Fame career. Congratulations to Carmelo. That's it for us. For Jim Stechschulte, this is Wes Cheng. You've been listening to the Juice on the Cuse podcast presented by Believe in Rivals, and we will see you next time.